Looking around the internet, I've seen a lot of people who consider San Junipero to be the best episode of Black Mirror. And that's subjective, so I can't really say that they're wrong, but I still kind of thought it was shit, though. San Junipero is definitely the happiest episode of Black Mirror, and that's why a lot of people like it, really. But it seems like the writers worried so much about making it happy that they ended up sacrificing most of its potential. And I would say it's actually one of the worst episodes of Black Mirror. So many people say that San Junipero has the best writing, and even won a fucking Emmy for it. They cite things like how the music choices are vaguely related to the premise and how there are bits of dialogue which only make sense on the second viewing. Neither of those actually make the story more interesting, though, because they never build on a central theme, and the extra bits don't comment on anything. In fact, they waste so much time on the little crap like that, honest to God, I couldn't list 4 things about any of the characters, and there are only 5 who have even the slightest impact on the plot. The 2 main characters each get like 40 minutes of screen time, but I honestly couldn't tell you anything about them, other than that they're lesbian, one of them was in a car crash, and the other one's family died. Another thing which is weirdly lacking in this episode is a twist. Black Mirror episodes usually have one, and this one has like a half twist where all the characters are just in a simulation for old and dead people. I say a half twist because it gets revealed about halfway into the episode, and in such a gradual way that it's totally unsurprising and pretty fucking boring. At the same time, it's put so late that they don't even have enough time to fully explore the setting and have the characters interact in the way that they want. Even then, this episode is just fucking slow. This episode wastes so much time, it's almost unbelievable. Like White Christmas, which goes really far in depth about isolation and ostracism, and connects 3 or 4 different great concepts into one interesting plot while still exploring the characters, is only 12 minutes longer than San Junipero. That's 20% more time, for 100% more plot. Almost nothing happens, which isn't totally contrived. Like, toward the end, Kelly says, "I want to be dead forever, because some other people are also dead." Which is so stupid, it's almost impressive. And 2 minutes later, after she almost dies, not even in real life, in the fucking simulation, she just kinda changes her mind. Either that's a plot contrivance to make it seem like the ending won't be super happy, surprising the viewer when it's way too happy, or you just wrote one of the dumbest characters ever. I'm mostly confused why they didn't make this episode an hour and a half long. Then maybe they could do some of the dumb romance crap and also something interesting, but instead we're supposed to just be entertained by a plot that would be 100% standard if this were a romance story. Maybe if you're the type of person who likes romance stories, you'd be less bothered by that, but I felt after watching this that it just kind of didn't go anywhere. I'm not even saying that having a happy ending ruins an episode. Nosedive had what is, for Black Mirror, a super happy ending, and that worked great. They managed to mix that happy ending with the message. They don't give a fuck that they're in jail, because they finally have an actual human connection instead of just worrying about what people think about them. Like, the 2 characters didn't just say, "Oh, well, we're in a very complex situation, which lends itself to metaphors about the essence of humanity, but I'm happy for some reason, happy." San Junipero does try and mix in a little bit of interesting stuff, but it does so in the worst way possible. Instead of actually posing any interesting questions or possibilities about a world where they literally cured fucking death, we get a bunch of masturbatory symbolism and writing that only makes sense the second time you watch.
It's got different endings, depending on if you're in 1 or 2 player.
Fuck off. Instead of writing the dialogue in a way which makes sense, they all talk like there's something we don't know about them, so it is absolutely not surprising when there's a twist. The setup's actually pretty interesting, but because the episode has to have such a happy ending, the episode also can't go in depth into exploring, well, anything. The episode's so fucking busy with the unrelated story about the characters that it barely even looks into the setup. There's a lot you could get into about how all the fucking people in the sim are just looking for their own satisfaction, like the same as the people at the quagmire. The way that immortality gets wasted on people who are just mindlessly partying. You could even go in depth as far as if the people are still alive, like do they keep their brains running, or are they just totally simulated? And if so, don't you think you could say something interesting about whether or not a person's personality can be boiled down into like a script? And what the fuck is the outside world even like if they cured dying? But instead, they just kind of vaguely reference a little bit of that stuff and hope you overthink it so much that you'll believe the episode was actually saying something. If you try hard, and I mean really hard, you can probably read an interpretation which is almost tangentially alluded to in the episode. But honestly, if you have to preface a statement with, "If you really think about it," then that probably wasn't a significant enough part of the episode to be its meaning. During the sex scene, I realized that over a third of the runtime was gone, and the only plot point so far was that they were lesbian. At the end of that same scene, I was like, oh gosh, there might be something which complicates the situation, starts a thought-provoking story arc. Then the one and only story beat in the entire rest of the episode, the climax of the drama, what's typically the crux of the allegory, is that they're lesbian, but like forever this time. Great job, guys, you did it. You beat homophobia. A TV show about worlds that don't actually exist and which are typically dystopic. A situation which could not exist in a normal place. Showing a loving lesbian relationship? Nice touch. At this point, I want to make clear that I don't think that the writers fucked up this episode. A happy ending wasn't a mistake or even a bad choice, really. They were just aiming for a very different end product. But what were they aiming for that made sacrificing everything else for that happy ending a good idea? Okay, well, technically, Emmy bait. But seriously, everything about this episode screams Oscar bait to me. Like the super shoehorned lesbian relationship. I mean, I've got nothing against gay characters, but it's almost insulting when they act like they're saying something about society and homosexuality, but totally aren't, and they're just using homosexuality as a tool to make people think this episode is super cultured, and it definitely isn't. It was a heterosexual couple when I first put the story down, and then I thought, well, what if it wasn't? I think it gives it an extra resonance because they couldn't have legally gotten married in 1987. That makes no sense. The story isn't even taking place in 1987. It's taking place in like 2090. Maybe if the characters had actually like met or had been lesbian in the 80s, but then like in the future selves, they're like, oh, we can be lesbian now, like actually. But they weren't. Hell, even the setting of them being in like a nostalgia town is supposed to keep you from actually thinking about the setup. Who cares about the way people deal with death and the lack of it when there's dancing? Yeah, dance in the setup, dance in the credits. Seriously, they skirt around the premise so much it's almost impressive that they make it feel even slightly coherent. This entire episode's supposed to just be super easily digestible and not actually make you question anything, unless you don't believe in lesbians. I guess that Black Mirror is pretty soft as sci-fi goes, but San Junipero is so soft it doesn't even count as sci-fi anymore. And that's how I would really summarize my thoughts on this episode as succinctly as possible. It's got all the general qualities of a good TV show, like great cinematography and editing, but it's got none of what makes for good sci-fi. And that might be good news if you really hate sci-fi, but in that case, why the fuck are you watching Black Mirror? I know I'm in the minority opinion though, everybody else fucking loves it. It's the second highest rated episode of the entire series, but is this one really the episode which deserves an Emmy? Like honestly? The first two seasons weren't really eligible for a normal Emmy because they were produced by a British company, so they might have given it to San Junipero just to make up for not being able to give one to the first two seasons, but it's totally insane that they chose the one episode, which isn't actually sci-fi, to represent the series as a whole. What's even worse is that one of the awards they won was Best Writing. The one episode in the entire series which doesn't even try gets Best Writing. If you're still not convinced, let me say this. San Junipero is the kind of sci-fi which people who write for Kotaku like. I rest my case. Ultimately, I don't really want to take away anybody's enjoyment of this episode. I just want to say why I felt that it wasn't up to the standards that a show like Black Mirror should demand. It's weird because when I first watched season 3, I thought it was awesome. Binging all the episodes left me kind of brain dead and I just assumed that they were great. Looking back, most of the episodes were great and almost all of them were perfect on a technical level, so I kind of have pretty high hopes for season 4. Well, here's hoping that season 4 is super fucking sad. Let me know in the likes and dislikes and comments if you agree or disagree with me and what you think of this video. If you really like it, share it. If you really hate it, call me a fag in the comments, whatever you want. It'll be really encouraging to know if my stuff is actually good, and if it's really shitty, it'll be helpful to know that I shouldn't be doing it. Either way, even if you just don't give a fuck, make your opinion known in the comments, it'd be very helpful.